The Republican Party has become a traitor not just to itself, but to humanity. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Some public health experts who are having an honest and serious discussion about the need, if this anti-mask, anti-vax, all this kind of crap continues, the need to make COVID vaccinations mandatory. And as soon as you say that phrase, cue the hysteria from the Republican cultists. Oh my God, they're gonna, and now they're like, oh, microchips and I mean, it's just all this weird stuff that is a complete fantasy that's being peddled on Facebook by and large, and these people are just buying into. And it's mind-boggling, and as they're running around breathing on people, and even in the Supreme Court, the Republican cultists, they said, the founders of our republic and the framers of the Constitution, they'd never go along with closing churches and synagogues or preventing them from holding large super spreader events. They would never do that. Well, actually, they did do that. The capital of the United States from 1790 to 1800 was Philadelphia. In 1793, Philadelphia had a massive yellow fever epidemic. Nobody knew what caused it. They didn't realize it was caused by mosquitoes. They did know, though, that it came in the summer and it left in the fall. And it didn't happen at all throughout the winter and the early spring. So, hey, we can do something about this public health-wise, and they did when this yellow fever epidemic recurred 3 years later in 1796, another bad mosquito year. Again, they didn't put two and two together. Well, actually, a few did. Dr. Benjamin Rush, a good friend of Jefferson's, actually proposed that the mosquitoes had something to do with it, but, nobody took him seriously. But in any case, that city's government, along with the cooperation of President George Washington, who was presiding over the United States in Philadelphia, and the members of the United States Congress, which included a number of people who had signed or helped write the Constitution of the United States, and a couple of people who had signed the Declaration of Independence. Most of them were still alive. Keep in mind, this was 10 years after the ratification of the Constitution. This was 20 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. They all said, cool, let's do something about this. And what the city did was a block-by-block quarantine, not just a quarantine, an actual evacuation. They said to people, and it turned out that these were the blocks that, looking back on it, were near, swampy areas or large puddles or where there were a lot of mosquitoes, right? But in any case, they were able to identify those parts of town that had the worst parts of the outbreak, and they told the people living in those houses, you have to leave town until the fall. Now, that's a hell of a lot more invasive than saying, you got to wear a mask. You've got to leave town you've got to leave your home. You and your entire family, get out of town. And they enforced it block by block. They forced people out of their houses. And did George Washington say, oh my God, this is tyranny? No, he was totally supportive of it. In fact, he left town and went to Mount Vernon in Washington, in Virginia, near Washington, D.C. The members of Congress, did any of them, is there a single one of them on the record saying, oh my God, this is tyranny, they're forcing people out of their homes in the nation's capital? Not a one. Not a single senator, not a single member of the House. And yet the Supreme Court, a week or two ago, 3 weeks ago now, I guess, said, when Governor Cuomo said that churches and synagogues, and presumably mosques too, although I don't think they were having this problem so much with mosques, but particularly some of the right-wing Christian churches and the ultra-Orthodox Jewish congregations were continuing to meet in defiance of the large meeting orders, and Cuomo said, okay, we're gonna break you up with the police. And this went to the Supreme Court, and the right-wingers on the court, don't know if you've noticed, there are 6 of them now out of 9. The right-wingers on the court with Amy Covid Barrett right at the front of this thing, said, oh, that's tyranny. The founders and we are originalists. We know what the founders thought. We can read their minds. We can channel them. All except Neil Gorsuch. He says, I'm an originalist. I look at the original words of the Constitution and I alone know what they mean. But they all came to the same conclusion, all 6 of the right-wingers, which was, Cuomo can't do that. Founders never would have done that. Public health, putting public health above freedom? Are you kidding? Freedom is more important than public health. They were lying. George Washington not only supported public health measures, he signed the first single-payer health care legislation that provided free hospitalization and medical care to civilians, to sailors. They built a hospital for sailors. I mean, this is just like, this was nuts. And by the way, in Philadelphia, the churches were closed down during the yellow fever epidemic. I'm not sure that all of them were, but the ones in the quarantine areas, in the evacuation areas, they were shut down. Nobody said a peep. This is how bizarre the Republican Party has become. The so-called conservative movement. The Republicans have fought teaching sex ed in our schools. And so in the developed world, we have the highest rates of sexually transmitted diseases. We have the highest rates of teenage pregnancy. We have the highest rates of unwanted pregnancies in the developed world. The Republicans have been fighting teaching evolution in our schools. We are falling behind other countries right now, left and right, in terms of patents, in terms of scientific innovation. The Republicans have been denying climate change, and the world is on fire. We are the laughing stock of the world, literally, for this. But they're doing it because, hey, you got a couple of fossil fuel billionaires with Charles Koch at the front of the bunch and ExxonMobil leading the charge, saying, I'm not killing the world. And now this latest campaign against public health. I mean, the Republicans' hatred of science has damaged America's standing in the world and destroyed the lives of millions of people. And not just with COVID. Thomas Paine wrote a book called The Age of Reason. He thought we were coming into an age of reason and enlightenment. Today we have the age of the intentional Republican stupidity. And they don't just embrace it for themselves, they're hell-bent on imposing it on every American from school children on up. They've rigged our elections by making it harder to vote. They promoted racial and religious bigotry and violence. They've destroyed our public school systems. They've gutted our unions. They've rewritten our tax code to screw the middle class. I mean, since the election of Ronald Reagan, Republicans have damaged America more in 40 years than if we had been invaded by a foreign country. These Republicans are not patriots. They are traitors to reason, to science, to education, to human rights, to democracy, and now, unbelievably, to public health. They are traitors to humanity itself. And the only way to deal with a death-dealing cult is to end it.